Good afternoon to all attendees who have joined. We're going to let everyone filter into our webinar and we'll start in just a moment. Thank you for everyone who has joined us already. We'll be starting shortly. Again, thank you to everyone who has already joined us this afternoon. We'll be starting momentarily as we wait for all attendees to come into our webinar. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We are excited to have you here this afternoon joining us. I do want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Deborah Fletcher, and as the head of team and culture here at Stanley Martin and a 20-year veteran to the new home construction industry, I'm really excited about what we're bringing you today and honored to lead you through today's webinar. Today, we're going to be covering a lot of great topics to help you navigate today's home buying market. We feel pretty confident you will leave our session with a better understanding of how today's news affects you, what you need to do to prepare to purchase a new home today, and why today is still a great time to buy. I'm excited to say we also have two experts joining us today. In just a bit, you'll be hearing both from James Walker, a loan officer with First Heritage Mortgage, an affiliated business of Stanley Martin Homes, and he's here to answer some frequently asked questions about interest rates and other financial impacts of today's economic climate. We also have Michelle Lindsay, who is one of our neighborhood sales managers at Stanley Martin. She will be talking about what you can do to be prepared to purchase a new home in today's market. As you know, if you registered for this webinar, you had the chance to submit some questions. In addition to the questions our live panelists will be talking through, we've also had a few of our local sales leadership answer some of those most frequently asked questions, and we're going to share those with you during a Q&A portion of the webinar, so stay tuned for those. However, I do want to point out that in your Zoom options, you should see a choice that looks like a Q&A button. We also have a team standing by to answer and help direct questions you may have actually during this webinar. So if you have some, please feel free to post those in our Q&A session. If for some reason we are unable to get to those today, we will be directing those questions to our team to be answered following this event. And so with that, I am really happy to introduce James with First Heritage Mortgage to start us off with a presentation. James, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Appreciate it. Thrilled to be here today. As Deborah mentioned, I'm going to talk through why today is still a great time to purchase a home. And we'll answer any questions that you have in regards to interest rates and how the pending recession may affect buying a home, and how buying versus renting could be beneficial for you in the short term and in the long term. So we've got a PowerPoint presentation that we'll walk you through. And then once we're done here, you can submit any questions through the Q&A and I'll be happy to answer them. So why is today a good time to purchase a home? The main answer to that question is going to be supply and demand. So we're still in a category where there's more home buyers than there are homes available to purchase out in the market. As you can see by this slide, it's talking about just new housing. So that would be new construction in general. So this was based off of 2021. The housing starts completed over 1,300K, destroyed annually. That could be by fire, flood, or freaks of nature. You're going to subtract 100,000 there, and then the total new supply would be 1,200K. So the household formations, that we're looking at throughout the United States is 1,400K, which gives us a deficit, and that's why we talk about supply and demand. And supply and demand is what's going to drive home prices up as well, which we'll talk about further in these slides. So we can look at record low housing inventory. Housing inventory was really at its peak. For some of us that were in the marketplace and remember the collapse back in 2008, that's when we were at a record high in regards to home inventory. So as you can see right now, the inventory is going up a little bit right now. But when you look at the average over the course of time, we're still at a very low inventory mark, especially in regards to the buyers that are out there. So low vacancy rates, that's kind of falls in line with the same thing. And this is falling over a period way back through the 60s and the 80s and the 90s into the current day. And you'll see right now we're at an all-time low in regards to property vacancy rates, meaning homes available. So 0.8%, which is a very low mark over the last 50 years. So average equity gain from Q2 in 2021 to Q2 in 2022. So that's through June of this year. So this is very accurate. And what you're going to see, and we can, if you want to move to the next slide, we're going to talk specifically in regards to this area here in the Mid-Atlantic and in the Southeast. So the average equity gain from year to year was 42,000 in Maryland and Virginia. The average equity gain in North Carolina was 70,000, 61 in South Carolina, 65,000 in Georgia, and 100,000 in Florida. And a lot of that is completely related to supply and demand, is because we saw a lot of people in 2020 and 2021 during the COVID era decide to move south, to move to warmer climates, and more retirees as well. So you saw some of those areas south of Virginia and Maryland increase a little bit further. So this is a great sign for the people that live specifically in this area, but when you see in the last slide as well across the country. So this is really good. How will a recession affect mortgage rates and purchasing a home? This is obviously a topic of conversation that's going on a lot recently with the cost of inflation, with interest rates going up. So this slide is, there's a lot of people that nobody has the crystal ball. Nobody can say exactly what's going to happen or when rates are going to go down or if they will continue to go up. But what I can share with you are facts. And a few of these next slides are really going to kind of dive into that and show you what recession and inflation and how it's trended in the history of the past. So recession means falling mortgage rates. Mortgage rates in the last 6 recessions from peak to trough. Over the past 6 recessions, mortgage rates have fallen on an average of 2.38% from the peak. So there was a huge drop in the 80s and the Carter era. You fast forward to when we had the mortgage collapse in 2008, we saw interest rates go down. And then we saw interest rates go down a full 1% and even a little bit more than that in 2020 during the COVID crisis. So you'll see that it mentions in this quote from Fortune that in many cases they continue to fall after the fact. as it takes time to turn things around when the recession is technically over. And we saw that in 2020. Rates went down, then they went down a little bit further before they started to climb back up. So how does the Fed raising interest rates affect my ability to purchase a home today? And that's a very good question, and it's very timely because just this week the Fed's raised rates again. It can be hard for me to listen, to the media to see what goes on because they will talk about how it affects mortgage rates, credit cards, loans, and things like that. And a lot of that is true. But one thing that the Fed rate doesn't do, it doesn't affect long-term mortgage rates directly. Okay, so it will directly affect those who have home equity lines and things of that nature, but it doesn't directly affect mortgage interest rates. For example, the Fed raised the bank interest rate 0.75% the other day. Interest rates did not move up for housing 0.75%. So a lot of it is because there's speculation built into the market, but when the Feds do that, that's their bank rate. So this slide shows kind of what the response was, inflation, how they changed the bank rates and what it did to mortgage rates. So if you go back to the Greenspan era, which was when the mortgage collapse was, inflation went from 1.75 to 3.5%. We saw mortgage rates go from 7 to 8.5%. Well, what did the Feds do? They took their rate back then from 4.75 to 6.5%. Inflation went from 3.5 to 1%, right? And the mortgage rate response, because of that, it went from 8.5 to 5.5%. So what the Fed is doing right now is and what you hear, which is accurate in the news, is they're trying to fight inflation by raising these Fed rates, which will cause ultimately interest rates to go down. We can move on to the next slide. One more thing I'll add in regards to that is the things in regards to facts. So in the first quarter of 2022, inflation was at 8.5% and unemployment was at 3%. And I don't believe this slide was included, but what we've seen in the history of the United States was any time that we saw inflation above 7% and unemployment below 4%, that recession occurred within the following 12 months. So I can see why the forecasters and the predictors are saying, hey, next spring, next summer, we're going to see interest rates go down. So what does it mean for home prices to appreciate, and how does that influence my home buying decision? We can get into that. So 14 million more households today than in 2007. Almost 3 million fewer homes available. The next 3 years is the peak of the millennials entering the home buying market. So we have more buyers on the market. Forecasted household growth is on the rise as well. We currently have record low inventory, which is another key component. And the Fed is taking action to curb inflation. So that's what we had just talked about. As these Fed rates go up, we're going to see inflation go down, and with that, interest rates should go down as well. Statistical analysis suggests that interest rates will fall in the next 6 to 12 months. So rent versus buy. So this is a good indication of what it's going to look like at a 500,000 sales price and a 350,000 sales price with specific loan amounts of 20% down. So we're going to assume home appreciation of 4.1%. And I believe that we were looking at principal and interest principal paid based off a 6% interest rate. But you can see in year one, the total principal isn't as much that gets paid down because more interest is paid up front. And then as you get it within multiple years, it becomes less interest and more principal. So after year 5 on a 500,000 sales price, you've got an equity position of positive 243,000 on the 500,000 sales price. And that 350,000 you see that positive equity gain is 138,000. So renting. So this is just an $1,800 a month rent schedule and a $1,500 a month rent schedule with a 5% increase per year. And as we're seeing interest rates and more investors getting into the market, we have seen rent prices increase dramatically over the last 24 months. So when you're renting, obviously you're not gaining any equity in the home. And this shows that at $1,800 a month over that same 5-year period, you're out of pocket $120,000 and $100,000 in that $1,500 a month range. So feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A box so we can either answer your questions through that channel. I will want to add one of the things that we've talked about a lot recently, why it would be still a good time to buy right now, or people talking about, should I wait wait for interest rates to go down and have a lower monthly payment? The reason I don't think that that's a good decision is because what you can see in these slides is that the values of homes are still going to go up. So the longer you wait, the more you're going to see the home prices increase. And during that time, you're going to be paying rent and not gaining an equity position. So one of the terms that I see that's kind of cute in the marketplace right now is, you want to marry the home, you're going to date the interest rate. So a lot of people, they want to, it's our job to find a solution that fits them for their needs to get into the home. But ultimately, our idea is going to be to reduce their interest rate as soon as possible. I can tell you on a $400,000 loan amount, when you reduce your interest rate 1%, that's going to save you nearly $500 a month in your monthly payment. So it's going to be a significant thing for buyers when they get that opportunity to refinance. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody and look forward to your questions.
Thanks, James. That was great. And I think you covered so many topics that we know questions came in on, that people are worried about when considering buying a home, and shed some light on, as people know, I love the facts, right? And so I think you did a great job there, really sharing what's in the news today and compared to the facts, and how people can be empowered to make a decision and marry the home and date the rate. That is a new favorite term of mine as well. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that makes a great transition to our next guest, Michelle Lindsay. She is one of our veteran neighborhood sales managers who has a ton of experience in helping new home buyers like you listening in today navigate the home buying process from start to finish. And Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. You hit the nail on the head. I absolutely love helping first-time home buyers and move-up buyers. I've been with Stanley Martin for 10 years now, so I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm happy to help shed some light on some of the questions that you received today.
Great, Michelle, thank you. So we did receive a bunch, so I'm going to dive right in with the first one. And so I'd like to start with, James covered a lot of really good factual information about the market, but from your perspective, what information do buyers need to know or have available for that loan and home buying process?
That's a great question. I get this question all the time. Not like it isn't exciting, but also stressful enough to identify the home you want to move into. But then there's that whole other piece of it that you have to think about. So what I normally advise home buyers is we have this great partnership with First Heritage Mortgage. You have your Stanley Martin home sales representative, and you have your loan officer with our affiliated lender. You have a whole team of people to help guide you through the process. So if for some reason you don't have one of those things, or you don't have everything in order in the beginning, both of us are there to help guide you through that. Just when you're making your loan application, if you have access to your pay stubs, if you have access to your W-2s, or if you're 1099, if you have access to your most recent tax returns, they're not always necessary. And your bank statements. So the most common thing I hear from people is, oh, I have to go get that. If you have those things readily available when you make your application, it will be easier for the loan officer to give you answers faster. based on your qualification. And one of the things I always like to say is no screenshots. Make sure you're giving both the front and the back of every document, because the more thorough you are, the faster we can get you the answers you desire.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sounds like just putting some time aside to quickly collect those really sets people up for success. So I think another term that's come up that we could really help people understand are, what are closing costs, and does every home buyer need to pay them?
This is a great question. This has come up recently. Closing cost is an all-encompassing term for many items. So when you're purchasing a home, very much like when you're purchasing a car, we're going to transfer that title to your name. There's some fees every time you transfer the title or ownership of a house. That's part of your closing cost. There are prepaid items, lender-held escrows, insurance, and taxes. So the government wants to know, if you move into this house and for some reason you don't pay your taxes, there is an escrow or a certain amount of months sort of in the pot already. We do like to pay their loan officer for their services. So depending on the type of loan you do, there could be origination fees, or there could be fees that are in there to help lower the interest rate. So we call it closing costs, but it's really closing costs, prepaid items, settlement fees, and then you're also prorating your first month's mortgage. So if you were to move in the first day of the month or the last day of the month, that can alter the final amount of your closing costs. And I hear people ask a lot, well, what are they? Why can't you just give me those numbers? And you know an exact date that you're going to closing, they don't know how many days to prorate in there. So we like to give you a ballpark, but you don't get that exact figure to the T until you've identified an exact settlement date. But there is also a component in a lot of our contracts that lays out what is encompassed in closing cost in various areas too. But either your sales manager or your loan officer can walk you through these items once again, because I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, that was great. I think it's a great explanation of just all the parts and pieces that go into it. So let's actually define a term a little bit too for everybody. What is settlement, and how is that different from closing?
This is a great question. I've also had this come up recently. This can vary by state. There are a lot of states that just use the term closing. In our area, Northern Virginia area, or the DMV, we use both closing and settlement. The best way to describe it is, closing is when we are closing your loan and we are giving that to you and your lending institution. And settlement is when you are getting the keys and you have permission to occupy your new house. But we use these terms interchangeably. So really, I've now started saying closing/settlement, because really what that means to you is you're signing your final documentation and you're getting your keys. That's really what it means to the homeowner.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's also talk about kind of back to new construction. And as an amazing salesperson for us at Stanley Martin Homes, what do you see, and what are those pros and cons of buying new construction today?
There are so many. I could have an entire webinar on just the subject, but some of the key points that I like to touch on. If you're a first-time home buyer, if you have entertained looking at used homes, it takes a lot to mentally and emotionally move yourself into the place that you're going to live. This is a big next step for people. If you've looked at used homes and you've made that decision and you put a contract in, maybe you've been outbid. So nothing takes the wind out of your sails like coming to that decision, which could be so difficult and so emotional, only to be outbid and know that, oh, you can't have that anymore. So one of the biggest benefits to someone who's been out in the used or resale market is that you cannot get outbid when you buy a Stanley Martin home. Once you sign your contract, this takes a whole portion out of it and gives you peace of mind that that house will be yours. The other thing I love to point out is, if you are a first-time home buyer and you're coming from an apartment situation, if anything were ever to go wrong in your apartment or you wanted to have something repaired, you would have a property management company. As a first-time home buyer, you don't have that anymore. So I like to call it homeownership light. Because you're buying new, everything in the entire home has not had a birthday yet, has not had any wear and tear on it yet. You have all of the warranties on not just the house itself and the materials and workmanship, but each individual product that goes into the home. So giving you even more peace of mind that what you're moving into, hasn't been used and abused in the past. The other thing, you're not getting someone else's interpretation of what pretty or attractive looks like. All of our Stanley Martin homes have the most updated and most popular selections. So if you ever were to resell, they're going to be appealing to the masses. Everybody who's toured a used home has either maybe had a scent in the house they didn't really like, or some stained carpet or a paint color they would have to change. The beauty is you move in with a blank canvas that's open to your own interpretation and something that's new and clean with everything under warranty.
Great, Michelle, thank you for that. All right, so here's what I'd like to do, and I'm going to come back to you probably for some additional questions here at the end. But in addition to what Michelle and James have shared this morning, we did have some other common questions that were asked by the group and by all of you that registered. And I'd like to take a moment to answer some of those now. They are some pre-recorded answers, but we had a great opportunity to get some of our other sales leaders to comment. And so the first one I think that's important to comment on and get a response to is, in this market, how long does it take to get into a home right now? And I believe we have an answer to that question that we can serve up.
Was this?
I think we have a video on this. If not, I may turn it over to you in just a moment.
Currently in our division, we have homes available to move in to as quickly as 60 days or 10 months, depending on the stage of construction. If you're purchasing a home from the foundation phase, you would be at the latter end of that estimate. While we have had delays due to continued labor and supply shortages, Stanley Martin Homes has leveraged our immense buying power and good reputation to get the quality products and labor we need to complete your home. Additionally, we changed from what we called a built-to-order process to a smart select process, where we continually start homes and communities, then release them to the sell to the public versus selling prior to starting. This allows us to give a more accurate delivery time frame because the home is already through the permitting process and supplies are ordered. If time frame is an important factor to you for deciding on a home, you can share your ideal time frame with the Stanley Martin Homes representative, and they can point you to the homes and communities that may fit that time frame.
Great, that was super helpful, I think, to hear. And our smart select really was to try to help with the challenges of timing that we can see in new home construction. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end here. I think we also have some information on another video from Maria as well, who is one of our sales leaders in the Charlotte market, on some information about how prices are determined. And so if we can serve up that would be great.
Prices are determined by the market, which is based off of supply and demand. However, with new construction versus resale homes, there are other factors such as cost of labor, supplies, and land. The market can change very quickly, so at Stanley Martin Homes, we continually look at pricing and inclusions to make sure we are bringing the best value to our marketplaces.
Perfect. And Michelle, you talked a little bit about this, but we also, I think, have Michael to talk about some additional steps that people can take. And I think that's come up even on this webinar. What are additional steps that someone can take to make sure that they are ready to purchase? And so I'll turn over to the video of Michael giving us an answer on that.
When a customer's decided that they're ready to purchase a home, the most important aspect for me is getting a pre-qualification with First Heritage. This ensures that the customer understands the finances, understands what that purchase price is going to look like in a monthly payment, and really get an idea of what their affordability is. That helps them decide what home is going to make the most sense for them and allow them to be ready to purchase a home if they find the right fit.
All right, and then I'm going to turn it back to you, to Michelle, in just one moment, but we also have Jessica who can comment on, other than location and financing, what else should people keep in mind when selecting a home?
The best advice I ever received while I was searching for my very own new home was, what am I trying to move away from rather than to? Before you begin your new home search, take some personal inventory. Write down the top 3 things you'd like to change about your current living situation. This will help guide you to the things that you're looking to move to.
That's great advice. And Michelle, I think we can both agree that, knowing and often it's the things that are driving us nuts about our current house that really help us find the best next home. And so, Michelle, can you, with all of that great information about the next steps and how pricing is determined, can you also talk about what I think is something really unique with new construction around the options? How do I know what options will go into my new home, especially when purchasing new construction?
I love talking about this. We have 2 amazing programs at Stanley Martin. We have our Smart Select program, and we also have Design Studio packages. So being in the industry for some time, the way it used to work is you would identify a house, you would pick some of the structural options, and then you would have to wait to pick the cosmetic options in the home. And this waiting period was a huge stress point for our buyers, not knowing their final price, not having an exact date they would know their final price. So what we've done at Stanley Martin, we're sort of spearheading this effort. I don't know a lot of other builders that are doing this. And we took a lot of time to identify what were 90% or maybe even 99% of our home buyers choosing. And we created these smart selected packages. This is really what everyone wants in a new home right now. So you'll see some variance in cabinet color or flooring color, maybe countertops or appliances, but you can rest assured that the items that are in the homes in the community that you're looking at, that is what everybody wants and everybody is looking for in that community. So it takes the guesswork out of it for you. You also have the benefit of knowing your final price. What you see is what you get. There's a lot of transparency there. So with all of the noise in the market right now and quote unquote uncertainty, this takes a huge piece of it out for you. With our design packages, you may be able to pick some structural options in the home, and then you can pick through a menu of the most popular items that people have been choosing. But again, you'll know what your final price is. You can take that anxiety off of yourself that you know that these packages were professionally picked out of the most popular items that that people are choosing these days. And the best thing to do is to talk to your sales manager in the community that you're interested in, and they can walk you through which programs they're offering. And if you tell them what's really important to you, we have a lot of variety within those packages and those smart selections. So I'm sure that we're going to have something that fits your needs.
I'd agree with that, Michelle. Thank you so much for that, overview on how we're selling today. And I love that idea of price transparency. I think that's so important in today's market. So with that, we have gone about 30 minutes. We've had a ton of people join us. I am actually going to close us out. We know everyone who's joined is likely part of a very busy day, and we really appreciate you coming to our webinar today. I want to start by thanking Michelle and James for coming on live and speaking to all of us. I also want to thank our group that pre-recorded some answers to share some really good insight to the home buying market as well. You will receive a recording of this webinar. So we covered a lot of great information. So you will also receive that recording if you'd like to go back through it. If you asked a question that did not get answered, we may have answered some of those online. If not, our team will be reaching out directly to you to make sure we get you those answers. And Michelle said, one of the most important things you can do, you can find us on our website, but you can also visit us at our neighborhoods. If you have not been in contact yet with a Stanley Martin Homes neighborhood sales manager, we can get you in touch with them or reach back out to us at our communities. My final exciting thing is to remind you that if you did join today, and if you purchase a new home with Stanley Martin Homes by October 16th, you will receive a special incentive available only to those that did attend this webinar. And we will make sure you have that information coming out of our time together as well. So with that said, Thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you to our panelists. It was an honor to be here. Happy home searching and hunting, and hope to see you in a Stanley Martin home soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.